There are truths so ancient they were never meant to be written, only remembered. But some tried, some who saw beyond the veil, some who risked everything to leave behind a map, etched not in ink, but in vibration. One such map, lost for over 1,000 years, was once whispered among mystics, a text that detailed the soul's journey before it ever took form. A journey not spoken of in temples or textbooks, but felt in the quiet ache behind your ribs when you stared too long at the stars. They say this knowledge was erased, buried, forbidden. Why? Because if you remembered the path you took to get here, you'd never again mistake yourself for powerless. You'd never again see your suffering as random. You'd stop playing the game the world designed to keep you small. Because when you remember the journey before birth, you remember your sovereignty. This is not fiction. This is a recovery mission, a return to what your soul already knows, but your mind was trained to forget. This is the story of where you were before you were born. A journey that begins not with breath, but with the call. A whisper rippling across the field of infinite consciousness, echoing through the ocean of souls until it reaches you. A pull, a remembering, a sacred invitation. Would you like to return to experience? Not punishment, not exile, purpose. And in that moment, the moment your soul first stirs with curiosity to descend again, the journey begins. But to return to density, you must first pass through realms, stages, gateways of remembrance and forgetting. 7 to be exact, each one etched in light, vibration, and choice. And so, and with your consent, you approach the first threshold, the call of the infinite. Before you were a body, before you had a name, you were something far vaster, a current in the infinite sea of consciousness. There was no time, no skin, no edges to separate you from anything. You didn't think, you were. You didn't ask, you simply knew. And then the call came, not as words, but as a vibration pulsing through the stillness. A question made of light. Are you ready to return? Not because you lacked, not because you sinned, but because your soul, like all souls, longed to taste again what only form could offer. Contrast, growth, forgetting, and the beauty of remembering. This was not obligation. It was opportunity to evolve, to serve, to help raise the frequency of the very world you would soon forget you chose. This is the paradox of incarnation. You come not to escape the divine, but to bring it into density. You felt the pull, a gentle yearning to descend once more into matter, to learn, to stumble, to become something new through limitation. This call is recorded in ancient mysticism, what the Greeks called the soul's desire for form, what the Vedas spoke of as Lila, the divine play, and what modern physics whispers in quantum entanglement. Even in separation, there is unity. You remembered Earth, its pain, its chaos, its color, and still, you leaned in. Not all souls hear the call. Fewer still answer. But you did. You felt the invitation like a melody only your frequency could respond to. And with it came the first stirring of individuality. Not ego, but purpose. You knew it would hurt. You knew you'd forget. You knew the veil would be thick. But you also knew this. Something sacred can only be forged in contrast. Light knows itself only by touching shadow. Truth is made real only when tested in illusion. Love is not proven in ecstasy, but in separation. And so the call was accepted. You didn't fall. You volunteered. And with that sacred yes, the descent began. But before you could choose this life, you would have to face your past. Every wound, every vow, every story still vibrating in your soul's field. This is where you now step next, into the mirror of memory, where all that you've ever been returns, not to shame you, but to prepare you. Before any soul can move forward, it must look back, not with judgment, but with clarity. This is the moment when your soul stands before the mirror of memory, not as punishment, but as sacred preparation. Every lifetime you've ever lived rises, not just the images, not just the facts, but the feelings. You don't remember what you did. You feel what others felt because of you, their joy, their sorrow, the tears they cried when you left, the love you gave that changed everything, the bitterness that lingered long after a word spoken in pain. It's not shame, it's integration. This is not karma as law. It is karma as reflection. You begin to see that every life is a thread, and every thread is still vibrating somewhere in the field. What you ran from still echoes. What you healed still radiates. And in this luminous review, you begin to understand your own becoming. You see how every heartbreak softened you, how every time you betrayed your truth, a fracture formed in your own soul field, not as punishment, but as a teacher. You see the patterns, the cycles, the people who return lifetime after lifetime, playing different roles to help you evolve. You see how many times you forgot yourself, and how many times, through suffering, you remembered again. This life review isn't a slideshow. It's a soul immersion. You don't pass or fail. You feel. And in feeling, you awaken to what still seeks completion. Here you begin to ask questions. Where am I still unfinished? What did I not yet embody? Where did I run from pain instead of alchemizing it? What beauty did I plant but never see bloom? These are not burdens, they are invitations, because your next life, the one you are about to choose, will become the stage where those invitations are answered. This is what the ancient mystics meant when they said, "You do not choose your life to escape the past. You choose it to complete the spiral you began lifetimes ago." And so, with memory now made whole, the field shifts. A new chamber opens. Sacred presences gather, your guides, your soul tribe, the elders of the unseen realms. They do not command, they hold. You are ready now for the council of souls. You do not walk into this chamber. You arrive in it, called by resonance, not footsteps. A circular space made not of walls or matter, but of memory, light, and intelligence beyond form. This is the council. You've been here before, more times than you remember. And each time they are waiting, not as judges, but as mirrors of your own highest knowing. Some call them elders, others, guides, mentors, soul architects. But they are not above you. They are versions of consciousness who have already walked the spiral you now choose again. They greet you not with words, but with deep recognition. And when they look at you, they see everything. Not just what you did, but who you're becoming, who you've always been, beneath the forgetting. Their presence is impossible to describe. It's like standing before a mountain made of compassion, a sky made of memory, a silence that holds your entire soul with unshakable love. You sit before them and they ask only one question. What are you ready to become? They do not impose. They do not decide. They reflect. They hold up your review, your unfinished notes, your past vows, your dormant gifts, your hidden fears, and they ask you not to fix, but to choose. Will you choose the life that calls your highest courage? Will you accept the path that reveals your greatest light through challenge? They show you options, each a life with different contours, a life of love, a life of loss, a life of power, a life of sacrifice, a life where you awaken or forget. You feel them all in your field, not as thoughts, but as timelines you momentarily become. And the council doesn't interfere. They trust your knowing, because in this place, you do not guess. You remember what you came for. You choose with full awareness that some of the people you meet will break you open, that your family may not understand you, that you may walk decades in darkness before you remember your own light again. And still, you choose. Not the easiest path, not the most glamorous, but the one that completes the karmic thread you came to weave. And as you choose, the council smiles. Not because the choice is perfect, but because it is yours. This is sovereignty. This is spiritual maturity. And now that the choice is made, the next phase begins. You will now define the shape of this incarnation, its intention, its mission. You are ready to choose your soul's purpose. What you are about to choose is not a job, not a career, not a title to impress or a role to fulfill. It is the vibration you came to embody. This is the moment your soul selects its central intention, the reason you came back. In the realms beyond time, it's not about what you'll do. It's about who you'll become, what frequency you'll bring into the world through your being. Some souls choose to be teachers, but not in classrooms, in moments of kindness, in how they hold silence, in how they suffer with grace. Others choose healing, not as doctors, but as daughters who break family cycles, fathers who raise children with the love they never received. Some souls come for power, not to dominate, but to steward change, to awaken movements, to carry courage through dark systems. And others choose service, to be the presence in the room that keeps the light on when everyone else forgets it was ever there. This is not a fantasy. This is your soul remembering its contract, because your mission isn't random. It's precise. It's tailored to the karmic residue you still carry, to the gifts you were born with, and to the parts of the world you are uniquely equipped to transform simply by being yourself. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, "Better to fail in your own dharma than to succeed in the dharma of another." Your soul doesn't want imitation, it wants embodiment. So you begin to shape your mission, a life of challenge, yes, but also of meaning, a path that will test your voice, but will never silence your essence. You know that some days you'll forget this mission. You'll chase validation. You'll wonder why it hurts so much. But even then, your mission will whisper through intuition, through breakdowns, through the strange peace that arrives when you're exactly where you're meant to be, even if it doesn't make sense. And so it's said, your life will have a rhythm, a central melody that your soul will always return to, even if your human mind takes the long way. Your purpose is not something you find, it's something you promised. And now that you've chosen the frequency, you must choose the vessel, the body, the family, the lineage that will both challenge and activate the very mission you've just chosen. The next stage awaits. The descent into form begins. You are not randomly born. You are placed by choice, not chance. Before your first heartbeat, you stood before a field of possibilities, and you chose. You chose the body you would inhabit, its shape, its race, its gender, its limitations. You chose the bloodline, its trauma, its culture, its memories. You chose the land where your feet would touch the soil for the first time, not as a victim, as a vessel, because every detail of your incarnation would become the perfect mirror for your mission. That scar you were born with, it carries a code. That condition you struggle with, it slows you down just enough to awaken you inward. You didn't pick ease, you picked accuracy. You selected a nervous system that could hold your lessons, a voice that would one day rise through silence, a face that would carry ancient memory into a modern world. And then you chose your family, not necessarily the one that would nurture you, but the one that would initiate you, the mother who would abandon you so you would learn self-worth, the father who could not see you so you would remember your inner sight. You didn't choose safety, you chose the fire that would burn away your forgetfulness, because your soul knew nothing activates memory faster than pain. But within that pain, you also chose the genetic blessings, the instincts, the ancestral strengths passed down like sacred tools. Your lineage carries wounds, yes, but also wisdom, and you came not to repeat it, but to recode it. You are not here to escape your bloodline. You are here to transform it, to be the first to remember, to be the one who plants something new in soil that's only ever known survival. This is why you chose Earth, not as punishment, but as the place where light gets tested, refined, anchored. The earth is not just a planet, it is a school of embodiment. And your body is not a cage, it is the temple through which your mission breathes. And now, with body and lineage selected, there is one more layer to choose: the relationships, the souls who will walk beside you, teach you, challenge you, the contracts that will activate your destiny. E for birth, you sat in a luminous space with the ones you'd meet again. Some familiar, some forgotten, all chosen. These were not strangers, these were your soul collaborators. Some would love you, others would betray you. Some would lift you higher, others would break you open. And every one of them, you chose, not as punishment, but as activation. You made agreements in that sacred space. I will come into your life when you are ready to awaken. I will hurt you, not because I want to, but because your soul needs the friction to remember who it is. I will leave you so you learn how to stay with yourself. I will mirror what you refuse to heal. These contracts are not cruel. They are crafted with love at a level the human mind cannot yet comprehend. This is why that heartbreak shattered you so deeply. Because the bond was real, ancient, encoded. Why some friendships feel like home within seconds. Because they are reunions, not meetings. Why certain people trigger you beyond logic. Because they're pulling up the exact buried lesson you promised you'd face this time. These are not coincidences. They are coordinates on your soul's map. And some of the souls you made contracts with didn't even incarnate. They would guide you from the other side, whisper through intuition, send signs, protect your field when you forgot how to protect your own. You are never alone in this journey, not truly. Even the ones who caused you to bleed, they bowed before you, before birth, and said, I love you enough to play the villain in your story so you can become the hero of your life. And you, bravely, sovereignly, agreed. You trusted yourself to remember, to not get lost in the illusion, to feel the pain and still find the lesson buried inside. Not all contracts last forever. Some are short, some stretch across lifetimes, but none are accidental. So if someone is in your life, especially the ones who stretch, trigger, or magnetize you, ask not why are they here. Ask, what soul agreement are we fulfilling together? And once that contract is complete, you'll feel it. The energy releases, the lesson lands, the bond evolves. This is spiritual sovereignty, to see pain as part of the choreography, and to forgive not for them, but to fulfill your side of the vow. And now, with your mission chosen, your body selected, your soul bonds sealed, one last veil remains. The forgetting, the great silence, the soul's greatest sacrifice, and its greatest strength. This is the last doorway before the descent, not of fire, not of punishment, but of forgetting. Every soul who incarnates must pass through it, the veil, the soft, impenetrable silence that shrouds your memory, your truth, your origin. You knew this before coming. You agreed to it. You understood that to truly live the story, you could not be told the ending. You could not carry the memory of every life, every loss, every vow you once made in the stars. You had to enter the world empty, so you could fill it with discovery, with questions, with the holy ache that would one day lead you back to yourself. This veil is ancient. The Greeks called it lethe, the river of forgetting souls must drink from. In Gnostic texts, it is the fall from the pleroma, from full divine light into fragmented form. In Eastern traditions, it is Maya, the illusion that hides the eternal behind the temporary. But it was never a mistake. The veil is not cruelty, it is context. Because without forgetting, there would be no seeking. And without seeking, there would be no awakening. You forget who you are, so you can remember by your own choice. You forget your soul's mission, so it can rise again through intuition, suffering, and synchronicity. This is why you've always felt that pull, that strange nostalgia for something you couldn't name, that sense that there's something more than this world wants you to believe. That's your soul knocking, not to escape life, but to reawaken inside it. The veil is thick. It is reinforced by culture, trauma, education, fear, but it is not permanent. And deep inside you, beneath every fear, every story, every mask, your soul is still intact. And when you touch it again, in meditation, in heartbreak, in nature, in the presence of someone who truly sees you, you remember, not everything, but enough to know you are not just flesh. You are not just circumstance. You are the one who chose all of this. You are the one who walked through the veil because you believed in your own light enough to find it again in the dark. And now, the forgetting complete, the coordinates locked in, the soul anchored in its chosen body, there is no turning back. One final stillness before the fall into breath. There is a stillness that exists only once in a soul's journey. It is the moment after the forgetting, but before the birth, after the choice, but before the cry. This is the final alignment. Everything you've chosen, the body, the family, the mission, the pain, the gifts, begins to settle into form. The vibration of your soul starts to resonate with the frequency of Earth. Your infinite nature compresses into a timeline, a nervous system, a single heartbeat. You are no longer light alone. You are becoming matter. But before you leap, you are held one last time by the unseen. Your guides stand close. Your soul tribe surrounds you in silence, not because they have nothing to say, but because words are too small for what you are about to do. They don't cheer, they witness. Because only a soul ready to forget its own divinity to help heal the broken spaces of this world is ready to be born. Some souls hesitate here. They remember the pain, the violence of forgetting, the sharpness of density. But your soul breathes deep, not because it isn't afraid, but because it is ready. And so in that space between form and formless, you take a final vow, not to others, to yourself. I will remember, even if it takes a lifetime, even if I must lose myself first. I will return to truth. With that vow, your frequency locks in, like a seed pressed into the soil, like a star entering the atmosphere. You begin the descent. The field shifts. The spiral tightens. You are no longer a soul watching from above. You are the soul entering the body. And the next moment will not be stillness. It will be contraction, the pressure of the womb, the amniotic flood, the squeeze of birth. The leap is now. It happens all at once. No fanfare, no turning back. One moment, you are weightless, consciousness floating in the infinite, bathed in light, held by the all. The next, you are falling, not in distance, but in density. This is the leap. The moment your soul dives headfirst into the waiting womb of form, you do not fall like a mistake. You fall like a seed into the soil, like lightning finding the ground, like breath drawn into a lung that hasn't yet formed. This is incarnation, and it is sacred. Your soul contracts, tightens, condenses, from light without limit into the blueprint of a body that will soon carry your purpose. The heartbeat you hear, it isn't yours yet. It's your mother's. The pulse you feel, it's Earth's. You are not alone in this descent. The field escorts you. The guides keep pace. Your body begins to grow around you, cell by cell, memory by memory. But you are still remembering the moment of entry. You can feel the thin veil of eternity still humming in your bones. The womb is your first temple, dark, warm, sacred. It is here that your senses form, your spine unfurls, your mission burrows into tissue, and yet you do not speak, you cannot move. This is the surrender your soul knew would come. You are now subject to time, to gravity, to DNA, to the lineage you chose and the limitations you accepted. And when the time comes, you are pushed into the world through blood, through breath, through pressure. You scream, not because of pain, but because you just lost the memory of everything. That scream is your soul's cry at the first taste of separation, and it is heard by the universe, by the council, by the part of you that still remembers in silence. That scream is the beginning of your quest to remember what was once so clear. You are now human, but not only human. You are the divine wrapped in skin, coated in silence, awakened by contrast. And the world duel will now begin to tell you who you are. But your soul will wait, patiently, until one day you remember, you arrive, not with stillness, but with a scream, a sound no one understands but every soul recognizes, the sound of separation. The moment your body touches air, your soul realizes, I am no longer held in the arms of the infinite. I am here, in the ache of forgetting. You cry not from physical pain alone, but from a soul-deep rupture. For 9 months you were suspended in a dark ocean, fed by another, surrounded by a field of memory just thin enough to remember who you are. But birth is not gentle. It is the collapse of everything known, and the birth of a new illusion, that you are alone, that you are separate, that you must survive to be loved. These ideas don't arrive later in life. They enter with your first breath. And yet, this pain is sacred, because in that cry, you carry a code, a sound wave that marks your arrival, that echoes back to the soul realm like a flare. I made it. I am here. I have forgotten. Just enough. The veil is now sealed. The remembering will begin, but not for many years. The people around you smile. They welcome the baby. But few remember what just happened on a soul level. A divine being compressed into human form has just re-entered the world to complete a mission. And in the next days, the world begins to teach you what to fear, what to chase, what to believe about yourself. But beneath every word spoken to you, your soul listens for one sound: truth. And though the world may try to drown it, your soul never forgets how to recognize it. Even if you go decades asleep, even if you lose yourself in roles and rules and pain, the one who cried that day is still alive inside you, waiting, not to escape this world, but to awaken inside it. And sometimes you'll feel echoes of that first cry, in heartbreak, in loneliness, in longing you can't explain. Those are not wounds, those are reminders that you were once whole, and you came here to find your way back, with eyes open, with feet on the ground, with heart scarred but soft. Before you learned to speak, you already knew. You couldn't explain it. You couldn't defend it. But deep inside your tiny body, something ancient pulsed. You saw things no one else did. You heard voices between the noise. You sensed emotions that weren't your own. Pain behind smiles, fear beneath touch. You stared into corners where no adult looked. You cried at sounds that weren't loud and laughed at silence that felt full. This wasn't imagination. This was memory leaking through the veil. Because children are closer to the edge, closer to the realm they just left, still vibrating with the afterglow of divinity, still carrying the echo of soul truth before the weight of conditioning sinks in. You knew who was safe. You knew what felt alive. You even knew, somewhere deep down, that this wasn't your first time here. You may have spoken of past lives, of beings in the room no one else could see, of dreams that felt more real than waking, and the adults, well-meaning and afraid, told you it was pretend, told you to forget, told you to grow up, and slowly you did. Not because the truth faded, but because the noise got louder. You learned to perform, to mask, to silence the knowing inside you just to be accepted by those who had already forgotten themselves. But your soul never stopped sending signals. In the quiet moments, under blankets, in forests, at night, it whispered, "You're still more than they see. Don't forget me." And sometimes you listened. You felt déjà vu and wondered why. You met someone and instantly recognized their energy. You were drawn to books, symbols, sounds, things you couldn't explain but felt familiar. That wasn't coincidence. That was your soul tapping from within, trying patiently to remind you, I'm still here. I never left. I've just been waiting for the noise to fade. And now, here you are, grown, conditioned, wounded, and wise. And you're beginning to remember. Not all at once, but enough to return to the path, because the voice never stopped. You just learned how to hear it again. It doesn't happen all at once. Awakening rarely begins with light. It begins with loss, a heartbreak that fractures your certainty, a job that no longer fits your spirit, a silence inside you so loud you can't ignore it anymore. This is how the soul begins to awaken, not through ease, but through rupture. Because only when the identity you were given begins to fall apart can the one you chose begin to rise. You feel it as restlessness, as longing, as a question you can't put into words. Is this all there is? No one around you may understand. You might look fine on the outside, but something ancient is stirring within. A pull toward the unseen, a craving for depth, a magnetic draw toward meaning. This is not random. This is the soul remembering. You begin to notice patterns, synchronicities, people entering your life at exactly the right moment to open a door you didn't even know was there. Books fall into your lap. Dreams speak in symbols. You cry for reasons you can't explain. These are not breakdowns. These are breakthroughs. Because every tear, every disappointment, every misalignment was designed to bring you back to the path you planned before birth. You are not off course. You are being redirected. And for the first time, you begin to feel like maybe, just maybe, the things that hurt the most were not punishments, but initiations. You start to meditate, to listen, to walk slower, to ask better questions, and slowly, the veil thins. You begin to feel the presence of something deeper within you, not as a voice, but as a knowing, a memory that doesn't use words, a familiarity with things you've never studied. This is the soul rising, and once it begins, you can't go back. Not because life gets easier, but because it becomes real. You begin to live not as the version the world shaped, but as the one you came here to become. The awakening has begun. And now you start to ask the question all remembering souls ask. Why was this hidden? Who benefits from our forgetting? And in that question, you begin to see the system, not just spiritual, but structural. If you knew, truly knew, that you were a soul who chose this life, this body, this path, you would become uncontrollable. You wouldn't beg for validation. You wouldn't fear failure. You wouldn't sell your spirit for approval, money, or power. And that terrifies the systems built on obedience, because a sovereign soul is the most dangerous force on earth. So the truth had to be hidden, not erased, just buried beneath culture, conditioning, religion, fear. You were told you were born in sin, that your worth must be earned, that salvation was elsewhere, after death, through hierarchy, never within. You were trained to believe that suffering is virtue, that questioning is rebellion, that intuition is madness. You were offered labels instead of identities, grades instead of gifts, roles instead of reasons. Because a system built on control depends on disconnection. When you forget who you are, you become easy to direct, easy to manipulate, easy to exhaust. But here's the thing, they never erased the truth. They couldn't. They just covered it with noise. And now, the noise is breaking because awakening spreads like fire. One soul remembers, then another, then another. And every time one of us remembers, the whole grid shifts. You reclaim not just your story, but your sight. You begin to see the world for what it is, a school, a mirror, a place of illusion designed to provoke remembrance. And when you remember, you don't run. You root deeper. You speak clearer. You walk through the world not as a prisoner of the body, but as a light disguised in skin. You forgive not to excuse, but to unchain yourself from karmic loops. You create not to impress, but to express the frequency of your soul. You love not because you're incomplete, but because you overflow. This is why it was hidden, because remembering sets you free. And now that you've seen the truth, you cannot unsee it. You are not broken, you are encoded, and you are already returning. You don't need to find the path. You're already on it. You don't need to become your higher self. You're already becoming. The remembering you seek is already happening. Every time you pause, breathe, listen, you return. Every moment you choose love over fear, stillness over noise, truth over validation, you realign. You don't need more rituals. You don't need more answers. You need to trust the echo, the one that's been whispering through your life since the day you were born. That subtle pull towards something deeper, that aching for something higher. That moment when your heart swells and your mind goes still. Those are not emotions. Those are reminders. You came here with a mission. You picked every detail of your life. You wrote it in the stars and sealed it in your cells. And now, you are remembering, not all at once, but enough to live differently, to walk with presence, to speak with integrity, to see others not as threats, but as reflections. This is how awakening moves, quietly, personally, powerfully. It doesn't always feel like light. Sometimes it feels like grief. Sometimes it looks like losing everything just to find yourself. But through it all, the thread remains. You were never lost, only layered, only waiting. You are not here to escape the world. You are here to bring the soul into it. So live your mission, not perfectly, but consciously. Love, create, break, begin again, and let every moment, especially the hard ones, remind you, you chose this. You're strong enough for this, and you are already finding your way home. The circle is closing, not an ending, but an embodiment. You are not just a soul on earth. You are earth remembering its soul. And as you rise, so does everything around you. Welcome back, brother. We never left you.